voices explore our radical anatomy. We'd like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which the bookstore is located is the occupied, unceded, and seized territory of the Peoria, Potawatomi, Miami, and Sioux people. If you'd like to learn more, you can visit native-land.ca. My name is Carly Nussbaum, and I work as the Outreach and Sales Liaison for Women and Children First. We are one of the last remaining feminist bookstores in the United States, so thank you for your ongoing support. Our physical bookstore is open, but you can still order a copy of Body Talk and more from our website at womenandchildrenfirst.com. Events are a vital part of our store's mission, and if you're interested in learning more about our events each month, you can sign up for our monthly newsletter or check out our website. Coming up on September 4th, we are co-hosting a virtual launch of Hearing Happiness by Jaipreet Virdi with the University of Chicago Press. Now, I have the privilege to introduce the author panelists who will be in conversation tonight, and we would also like to thank and welcome our ASL interpreters, Amy and Rivka. And just as a reminder, everyone is welcome to ask questions for the authors anytime by leaving a comment below. We will make sure it gets to them. Kelly Jensen is an Illinois-based former librarian and current editor at Book Riot and her own popular book blog, Stacked. I forgot to tell you also, huge fan of your Book Riot stuff, love it.
Thank you.
She's the editor of 2 highly acclaimed YA anthologies, Here We Are, Feminism for the Real World, and Don't Call Me Crazy, 33 Voices Start the Conversation About Mental Health. She is also the editor of the collection we're celebrating tonight. Her writing has been featured in Bust Magazine, Fortune, Bustle, and more. And we're thrilled to have 2 additional contributors to Body Talk joining us tonight. Rachael Lippincott is the #1 New York Times bestselling author of 5 Feet Apart, and she currently resides in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Alice Wong is a disabled activist, podcaster, and consultant based in San Francisco. She is the founder and director of the Disability Visibility Project, an online community dedicated to creating, sharing, and amplifying disability media and culture. Alice is also the editor of Disability Visibility, an anthology of essays by disabled people. Now, Body Talk is an incredibly powerful and vital homage to our complicated bodies and the journey we may take to understanding them and embracing them. I just love this collection. Each story was intimate and thoughtful, and a reminder that each body is unique and valuable. I'm so excited to hear the conversation tonight, so please welcome Kelly Jensen, Rachael Lippincott, and Alice Wong.
Thank you so much, Carly, for the wonderful welcome, and to everybody who's tuning in tonight. My collection that just came out last Tuesday is Body Talk, 37 Voices Explore Our Radical Anatomy. And I'm so excited to be here with Alice and Rachael tonight to talk a bit about the book and to talk about body stuff in a way that we don't get to talk about openly and honestly. And before I dive in too much, I would like both of you to introduce yourselves, talk a little bit about your piece in the collection, and then anything those tuning in should know about you beyond what Carly just shared. Whoever wants to go first, go for it.
I'll go for it. Yeah, so my name's Rachael. I'm a young adult author based out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. For my piece, I wrote about my experience with scoliosis from kind of even prior to my diagnosis, which was my grandma at the kitchen table oftentimes just telling me to sit up straighter, and me trying to listen even though it was painful and uncomfortable, to, you know, my eventual diagnosis in a middle school gym class, which is always fun, to wearing a back brace throughout middle school and some high school, to finding out that the back brace was not working, and then having spinal fusion surgery when I was a sophomore in high school. So yeah, I read about my experience with that for my essay, and just kind of looked at it introspectively for the first time pretty much ever. So it was really awesome getting a chance to do that through Body Talk in this book.
Okay, thanks. Should I go? Is it my turn? Is it right? Yeah. Okay, thanks everyone. So Rachael, I too have scoliosis, and I also wore a back brace. and got spinal fusion surgery a year before you when I was a freshman.
Oh, wow.
And of course, my parents scheduled it in the summer, so I don't miss classes. It ruined my summer vacation, but here we are now. So hey everyone, my name is Alice Wong. I'm also the editor of a new anthology called Disability Visibility, First Person Stories for the 21st Century, published by Vintage Books that came out just this summer, so I'm delighted to be here. My piece of Body Talk, which is something I've always wanted to talk about, but I didn't get to yet, and I'm so thankful for this book and this opportunity. It's an essay titled An Ode to a Spit Cup, and it's all about my relationship between saliva, breathing, and swallowing. So, sometimes when we think about bodies, we think about like the actual anatomy, but there's so much more to bodies than that.
So one of the questions I get asked most frequently with these anthologies is, how do you find your writers? And so I've really enjoyed doing these panels virtually and getting to be with so many different panelists and talking about how I came to work with them. So I know Rachel has heard this story already, but I found Rachel through a mutual friend we have, the young adult author Siobhan Vivian, who had sent me a message and said, I had this student, she had this wild scoliosis story. She is like half metal, and Siobhan exaggerates just a tiny bit, but in a very nice way. And so I was like, okay, I need to know who this person is. Like, I need to know her story. And Rachel ended up writing this really heartfelt and funny and also like gut-wrenching story about scoliosis. And the piece originally was the second or third piece in the collection. And when my editor sent back edits, one of the like 3 things she said was, I think that needs to be the first piece because it so perfectly captures that balance of this is funny, this is awful, and does so in a way that is very real and really sort of captures the entire feel of the book. So I was super excited to do that. And Rachel's essay comes with a couple of little sketches that I absolutely loved.
Thank you.
Yeah, I didn't know she was an artist. I don't know if she would describe herself as an artist. I could be wrong.
I would not, but for the purpose of this, maybe a little bit.
But I loved it because it just felt so authentic to the piece and very authentic, I think, to the style of the book as well. I met Alice, must have been like 3 or 4 years ago now, when Don't Call Me Crazy came out. And I've been following her work for a while, but she did a chat with her Disability Visibility Project about mental health. And it was this incredible conversation that we had. And I remember thinking to myself, I want to work with her in some way. And this was the perfect opportunity to say, hey, I'd love to have an essay from you. As I say to all my writers, write whatever you want, because whatever your experience is going to come through. I had hoped Rachel would write about scoliosis, but I wasn't going to be mad if she didn't. She did though. And I had no idea what Alice might write. So when she asked, can I write about my spit cup and about how our bodies are so much bigger than how they're often portrayed, I was like, go for it. And so she sent me this incredible piece. And there's a line in there. It's going to take me a minute to find it now. There's a line I want to share because like I think about it all the time. Now that I'm pressured, I have to find it. And oh, here it is. Oh, so it's the last couple lines of her essay. My disability forces me to listen to my body and MacGyver the hell out of it. I am as grateful for my cyborg existence as I am grateful to my spit cup. And I just loved that. That really captures the whole of the piece, and just, it was something totally unexpected and absolutely delightful. I'm so honored I got to put both of these pieces in this collection. So it was interesting to hear you two talk about scoliosis, because one of the things I wanted to make sure I did is have at least one piece that covered it. And turns out 3 or 4 covered it in some capacity. And as I'm learning, more and more contributors had this experience, which is wild to me because I never see it in fiction. I never see it represented at like the YA level. I've seen a couple of middle grade books, but it's a fairly common experience that it's wild to me that it doesn't show up more. So I'm so glad that so many talked about that particular experience, because I think it'll help a lot of young readers feel like they're not alone, because they really and truly aren't. So I'm gonna kick this off with some questions for you guys, my contributors. And the first one is, what was it like to write a deeply honest piece about the human body? What challenges did you face, and or what surprises did you figure out along the way?
That's a big question.
And it's nice and easy.
No, definitely. It was really big for me. I think that I really hadn't reflected on kind of my entire experience, maybe from the very start, from like my grandma at the kitchen table, really, through everything that I had gone through with scoliosis. Like last month was my 10-year anniversary since my spinal fusion surgery. And I think like it was crazy that 10 years had kind of flown by in such a short amount of time. And this piece really gave me the ability to kind of look at everything as an adult, you know, instead of just like the messiness of adolescence. Sometimes, you know, you're going through it, you're wearing a back brace, you're told you have to get surgery, you have a scar on your back, all of those like small little things. So yeah, it was really big for me to be able to like sit down and kind of reflect on my entire experience with it, and kind of just, you know, see what I'd gone through, but also kind of see, you know, as an adult, how it had impacted me so much as a 14-year-old or a 13-year-old. So that was really cool to see. Definitely, it was awesome that this essay gave me a chance to do that.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, the challenge of putting in so much of your feelings and experiences into an essay that's, you know, roughly 1,000 words. Like, how do you do that? But also make it very immediate, kind of accessible, get out the main stories, but I mean, the main themes, but also, you know, give it enough detail. And I think that's the creative challenge, which is really exciting. And I think, you know, for my essay, I've had thoughts and just, you know, an inner monologue, an inner conversation with myself, just about these changes to my body. And I think this essay was a wonderful way to kind of be able to articulate that, you know, in words. And I think that's what's also just a gift, you know, and this is a way to share that also with the world. And I think, you know, I was kind of lucky in the sense that I've had a lot of these thoughts for a long time. So I kind of do the contours of like what I wanted to talk about, but also really being able to kind of hone it down. And I guess one of my challenges was, you know, how do I frame this in a way that's celebratory, really real and authentic, right? Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat any of it, but also not too much of a explainer. You know, I didn't want to like be, this is what it's like to live in my body, like that kind of, those kind of pieces that we see, like kind of like hot takes all the time on like bodies. Also, I wanted to avoid all this kind of like, you know, this need to always be like body positive, because I feel like that also glosses over a lot of our lived experiences. So like, to be truthful, honest, do it in a kind of funny way, but also in a way that feels real to me. And yeah, keep it honest.
That's what I've loved. And it's come through in every collection, but in this particular collection, I feel like the big thing that writers all the writers and the artists too were able to do is find that good balance of like being very, very honest and authentic without being 100% body positive. And so when people have said to me, this is a body positive book, I get a little worked up because that's certainly a theme in there, but in no way would I say this is, 100% a body positive book. It's instead a body reality book. Like there's good stuff, there's bad stuff, there's hard stuff, there's great stuff. And that I think comes through in each and every one of these pieces, that you see the good and the bad. And that's because of contributors like you two who didn't want to sugarcoat it, didn't want to tamp down your experience, and yet at the same time didn't want to create a primer, because even adolescents don't need a primer. And you shouldn't need to bring everything that to a 1,000 word piece, or like, and that's
entire life condensed down to 1,000. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I didn't want to share like my medical history.
Mm-hmm.
Like how do I talk about my body without going into my diagnosis, or just like, all the basic details, which I think sometimes readers expect that, right, in order to understand. But I feel like we as writers can also raise the bar in terms of like what we want to share with the audience too.
For sure. And I like to think too, in a book like this, if a 14-year-old picks it up and they want to know more, they can Google it. But also there's 37 people here now that they can go then research and find more works by and more insight by. So it's like, this is their starting point. And for some, this might be all they need. For others, they might be like, man, that essay by Alice just like really made me want to learn so much more. And then they find your book and they end up reading everything that you've written and worked on. And it's like, then they're exposed to hundreds more people. And that's really like the beauty of an anthology like this, especially with so many smart people. It's like, yes, there's 37 voices, but then how many hundreds more are there just connected with each of those people? So that's always exciting to me too, because I get to meet so many new people doing these, either because I reached out to them, or because it's somebody who is contributing knows and mentions, and it's like, then I get to up my knowledge too. And it's so cool to see what people are doing and saying and learning. And I can't though, like, let that be where it stops. Like, it's my responsibility to do more. And I like to think that books like this and writers like you two who offer just enough are conveying the same thing. Like, here's a taste. There's a whole world out there to learn more. And like, I encourage you to do that.
So Kelly, I was wondering, because we both have anthologies, I was wondering, even though 37 is a very significant number of people, that there's all kinds of experiences and styles and stories, there are always people that are going to say like, this is missing, or why didn't you include this? It's just like, sometimes I'm just like, this is just an anthology, like. So were there any kind of like feedback you've gotten in terms of like, why isn't this it, or just why didn't you chapter that?
In this anthology, not yet. I've had it with the previous ones, and part of it is readers not necessarily knowing how creating an anthology goes, or how writing nonfiction goes. So my last book on mental health was a really, really challenging book. And a big part of that was because people don't want to open up about it. So you're limited by the number of people who are like, yeah, I'm going to write about this very sensitive, very challenging thing in an honest way, and then be open to feedback about this very personal experience. Some of the stuff that I wish I'd been able to do in other anthologies, I did get to do in this one. And there was one topic that I was so desperate to find somebody to write about, because the original person I had to do it was awesome and then just sort of disappeared, which reality of anthologies is sometimes people just get overcommitted or something comes up and it's like, so you're prepared for it. And this person just like disappeared completely. And I was left with nobody to write about the deaf experience in a really creative way. I wanted especially somebody to talk about being a creative person and being deaf and what navigating those spaces was like. And so I was like, well, I could do without it, but this does feel like a hole personally. And I know that somebody would say that, and rightfully so. But I got lucky because one of the contributors knew some folks and got me connected, and it was awesome because then I got to work with a deaf stage actor and taught and learned about like how that works, how you perform on, you know, a major stage, like how do you navigate those worlds? I don't know. And like, it's fascinating to learn. And he was awesome to work with. That was, I think, the only thing in this book that stood out to me. But it's only been out for a week. So, you know, in a week or two, I'm sure somebody will have something, and, you know, you do the best you can though, right?
Yeah, and it's never like a perfect or complete or like definitive thing, but sometimes readers have those expectations, and I think it's always really important to give like as many caveats. At least for me, it is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. For sure. And I feel like even with fiction, you get that sometimes. It's like you didn't cover X and Y and Z, mm-hmm. and it's like I'm limited by space. You know, it's like I wish I could, but also I'm not going to give you a 700-page book where half of it is citations to, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Things.
So
absolutely.
So my next question for both of you. What is one of the most powerful things that you've learned about your body since adolescence? And it can be anything.
That's a big one.
I know, nice easy questions.
Go ahead, Alice.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess, especially speaking as a disabled person, I would say it's not all about trauma. You know, it's not all about loss, which I think is what people expect all the time in terms of just, you know, loss, weakness, something that's progressive. Clearly, you know, I have a progressive tradition, but like, it's not always this like downhill, like, you know, it's a trajectory. I think there's so many different ways of thinking about this evolution, and I guess in a way, like the nerd in me, you know, the sci-fi nerd in me, you know, makes me think about like this is like a metamorphosis. Like, you know, what are some different ways like of thinking about this as a evolution versus rather than a devolution of my body? And clearly, you know, we're all living in meat cages. You know, this is something that was coined by a friend of mine that I follow on Twitter, Ace Ratcliffe, who draws bodies like meat cages, and I was like, that's kind of accurate as well. But yeah, I think that, you know, there's so much kind of surprise that bodies are showing us every day, and I think there's a lot of times a conversation we're having with our body, and I think for too long, so many of us don't listen to our bodies. And when we don't listen to our bodies, we kind of get in trouble. So I think that's something that I've learned too, is to be more mindful and to respect my body. When it's telling me, hey, slow down, or hey, this is not good. So I think that's really important too, that as you're gonna gain more experience and just over time just learn to kind of to respect your body for what it is, and can I just kind of try to accept it as well.
I love that. Wow. Yeah. Definitely. I think that was a big realization for me. I think after surgery was kind of like learning to respect and just kind of reframing my thinking really in a lot of different ways about, having kind of a back that's different than other people's. than some people. So that was definitely a really big thing, I think, was the reframing. I kind of talked about this a little bit in this essay, but I think a huge part of that was my best friend wrote this poem where she talked about how like my scar on my back, how it kind of was like the point where it seemed like angels' wings were about to burst forth. And like the idea of that as like a 14 or a 15-year-old, when you know you have like acne and you're like going through everything in high school and you're struggling with your body and you're going through all these changes, just having like the person, one of the people that you love, just kind of like say that about you, just kind of, it totally made me like reframe my entire experience in some ways. So yeah, I think that was definitely a really big one, was just kind of looking at kind of like the hypothetical differences. You know, I went through having scoliosis, I have scoliosis, I have a scar, and just kind of celebrating it for what it is. Celebrating the fact that it tells my story. You know, your bodies they tell your story in a lot of ways. You know, you have a dent on your arm from falling off a bicycle, you know, have a birthmark on your side, stuff like that. All those little pieces are parts of you, and really just celebrating them for what they are and accepting them, I think, is really big.
I think what's also great is that even though it's pretty obvious, like our bodies are so diverse, and that's what's really exciting, is that's, you know, that we can adapt and just like, it's amazing what a body can handle. Like, it's really just like, oh, let's fuse metal rods.
Yeah.
That'll be fine. And a person can live really, like, you know, well, you know, afterwards, like, whoa, like, you know, what a body could go through.
For sure.
Is amazing. But also, I think having these kind of stories about radical anatomy is all about, like, you know, going against this really toxic notion that about perfection. And I think that's really important too, that these stories really counter, or at least engage with this false notion of perfection. And I feel like that's so important, especially in our American culture, where we place such an emphasis on, like, you know, when we think of as like non-disabled, like normal bodies, or when we think about as beautiful or healthy. These are always really important to kind of challenge those narratives.
Absolutely.
And that leads well into another question I have. One of the things that I love that you said, and that I think about all the time, is just how boring it would be if we all had the same exact body. Like, that'd be really boring, right? We'd have nothing to talk about. We'd have no experiences that are uniquely our own, because we'd all, in theory, be exactly the same. So that question I have that fits so perfectly with what you were talking about: was there a book, TV show, film, piece of media that impacted your body image as a teenager that you still think about today? And what sort of media do you see now that has contributed to your understanding of your body and body image as an adult? I think both of you can talk well to this, of your thoughts and experiences.
Definitely. I feel like, kind of like you mentioned it a little bit earlier in our conversation, just like scoliosis in media, how there were some middle grade books, but not a lot of YA books. And this question really, I'm like racking my brain through the media that I can think of scoliosis / back brace experiences, and coming up pretty close to empty. I guess the one that just popped into my head was like, oh gosh, House Bunny. Does anybody remember that movie? It came out like end of the 2000s. Yeah, Anna Faris was in it. Well, anyway, there's this one character. Oh, this is like horrible representation. She like wears a back brace, but she was able to like not have to wear it 4 years previously. So she's been wearing it for 4 years for like absolutely no reason. And like the point of her back brace experience in the movie is that like the main character, like it's terrible. She like undoes the screws, and then the girl like runs after the boy that she has a crush on. It makes absolutely no sense at all. But that's literally the only back brace / possibly scoliosis story I can think of that's like in film or TV shows.
Rachel, did you see Romeo and Michelle?
No, I have not.
Okay, so this is a bit of a 90s really silly,
Mm-hmm.
movie, but I think it's called Romeo and Michelle. Something. But again, it's about high school and like these like flashbacks. But there was a girl who wore up. I think it was Lisa Kudrow, her character.
I love Lisa Kudrow.
So she wore a back brace and awkward, it was like awkwardly dancing at a high school dance. But again, I think the back brace was used similar to way like retainers or like dental gear that it's made to like signify kids who are awkward and
absolutely
as an object to be teased,
Mm-hmm.
And then there's that Cinderella moment where like 5 years later they're just like supermodels or something.
They take the back brace off and that's supposed to signify all of that. Yeah, I'm gonna totally have to look that up after this.
I think it's Romeo and Michelle's high school reunion, or just.
I think it's Romeo and Michelle's high school reunion. I think you got it.
I think so too.
I'm gonna check that out.
Yeah.
It sounds really good.
I think about, I guess. So again, just the third of me. I do think that X-Men, the mutants, the idea of being mutants, is a really powerful thing to be thinking about. And just the idea that characters who are mutants are treated as the other in society. So with my disability, I actually do have a genetic mutation, and it's really, that to me, I think the idea of these kind of sci-fi or just, animated kind of characters, where you can really go anywhere with these stories, and that's so liberating.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I think with X-Men, they're very much grounded in social justice as well. And that to me was really exciting in terms of just this idea of being proud of being a mutant, resisting the state or military trying to control and just, fix people, which I think again, things that we do kind of deal with, explicitly and just, subtly through our culture. So I guess I would say X-Men would be kind of the closest kind of representation that I identified with.
I love both those answers because they offer such different perspective. You look at what the realistic side is, and what Alice says to that is, this is the before, this is the moment before you become the beautiful changed person. It's the symbol of awkwardness. And then you have X-Men where they're mutants, and yet that offers such power. That offers this completely different dynamic in a completely different genre and offers so many possibilities. And it's not limited to your before story, living your story as it is. It's fascinating. Okay. I'm going to ask one more question, and then I think be happy to answer audience questions. And this is a question that I get quite a bit, and that came up in the first event that I did for this book. And I know both of you have touched on this a little bit, but I'd love some more insight. And that is, what advice would you give young people about having and navigating their bodies in today's world? How can they build either their body neutrality or body positivity during a time when their bodies feel so alien to them? And I know when I say body neutrality or body positivity, because I do believe, and I would guess both of you feel the same way, body positivity is awesome, but you have to get to body neutrality first before you can even go further with it. And sometimes, sorry, there's a fly in the room. Sometimes the real work is getting into that neutral place. And sometimes that's where people stay, and that's okay. But I'll let you two offer any thoughts you have.
Rachel, do you want to go first, or I could jump in?
You could jump in. Go for it.
I guess I would say just thinking about my own experiences as a tween, a child, and a teenager. I think most of my experiences were just full of like frustration and rage. And I feel like, I'm in touch with my rage. I really got in touch with my rage. And I feel like sometimes that's the start. And that sometimes young people, especially children who've had a lot of, let's say, experiences in medical settings, are not given permission to unleash their rage, unleash their sadness, to say no to things. We're not given that agency because parents are the ones who are trying to, make the best choices for us. But I feel like that also leads to a lot of pent up feelings, and I feel like if you're a young person now and just wrestling with all these things, I really do try to encourage young people to say, like, it is absolutely okay to be angry. I think you really gotta just feel it and live through it because, it is part of who you are. It is going to shape your much of who you are. I think it did for me. In terms of somebody who had to grow up really, really fast, in ways that I did not expect to, but just this was the situation, and you just, you really didn't have that was what was in front of me. So I think it's okay to feel what you feel. I think that's my message, and I guess like there's try to please yourself. Like I think that's try not to really please the adults around you. Try not to it's okay to criticize and push back on things. Like just feel your gut and just if something feels wrong to you regarding your body and just how you're feeling, I really encourage you to try to voice that because there are people who are going to tell you that you shouldn't do those things. And I think part of growing up, part of becoming who you're really meant to be is, again, trusting yourself, listening to your body, but also trusting those spiders, like Spidey says, this feels a little sketchy. This feels a little off. And to be able to say that, I think is, important. It takes time. I'm still a work in progress. I'm in my mid-40s. I'm still a hot mess. I'm not, do I like adulting? No, I do not. So yeah, I think these are things that are, it's a constant work, but I can honestly say if you're young, it does get better. It absolutely does. I did not enjoy my junior high and high school experiences, and I can just definitely say that it definitely gets better. So just hang in there, hang in there.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Feel those feelings. I couldn't agree more. Yeah, that's a huge one. I think with this generation, there's like social media is like a whole other element. I think that, well, like my generation, it was kind of starting, and then just like previous generations, it wasn't as much of a thing. So I oftentimes think about just, the constant, like social media is great for some aspects, but also just like seeing people on social media and comparing yourself and all of those things that just are so hard for somebody that's going through changes and, becoming an adult and, and does have all of these feelings and is struggling to maybe like find themselves. So I always think about like how difficult that must be. But yeah, definitely I think respecting the feelings that you have, respecting, the experiences that you have, I think that's so big. I think one big thing in terms of like body confidence and or body neutrality and body positivity, I think is just kind of looking at kind of what makes you different, and kind of like what we're talking about. We don't all want to be the same person, but kind of looking at what makes you different and leaning into that. If there's something that maybe makes you feel the most yourself or the most confident, then that's kind of a sign, to be honest with you. I remember growing up, a huge thing, you know, if you're discovering your sexuality, or, you know, maybe there's just like certain elements of your personality or certain things that maybe people do tend to label as different. You know, it's special. It's what makes you unique. It's what makes you you. And so it's really big for you to just kind of embrace that and kind of see the beauty in that. There's so much beauty in difference. And I think that was really big for me growing up, was just kind of leaning into that and kind of respecting the feelings and respecting myself and who I am.
I love both of your answers. And as both of you were talking about feelings and feeling your feelings and having your experiences, I was immediately thinking about a piece in the collection called My Body, My Feelings by Patricia Elzy, which talks about how as well-intentioned as the body positivity movement is, sometimes it leans into policing feelings. And she talks about where that can be a big problem in and of itself. And I think about her piece all the time. And I think about her piece in context with, you know, you should love your body, you should this, you should that. And it's like, no, you're going to feel what you feel about your body. And that's your experience to have. You know, and similarly, Alice, you talked about this idea of being able to say no, or to express something not feeling right or off. And I think that conversation ties in so nicely to consent as well. We aren't taught bodily consent, and yet, like, that's such a crucial part of forging our identity and understanding our bodies and where they stand physically and politically. So both of you say the two things I think are important is, you know, feel your feelings, and also understand consent is a big thing, and it's yours to either give or to take. So those are my two pieces of advice as well. You guys said them beautifully. I see we have one question so far, and I'll read it. And the question is, I love the word radical in the title. What led to the choice to use that word, and why is it important to the anthology? So I really love the phrase radical anatomy, because to me that spoke, this is not a typical book about the body. This is not a book that you're going to find in the puberty section, which those have value, don't get me wrong, but like, this is not a puberty book. And so I wanted it to be clear that this book is, like all books, political, but that's not going to be kind of buried in there. That's going to be at the forefront of what everybody writes about. And so it meant a lot to have that word in there. This title actually came before, I think this title was sort of the working title from the beginning, and I know Radical Anatomy stayed there. And for me as an editor, having that framework was helpful in thinking about editing too. I don't like to write too much in my books. Like I'll contribute an essay, but I don't want to give too much away in each section, because I want the pieces to speak for themselves. It's way more interesting to hear what everybody else has to say, and for me to sort of step back and just say, okay, this section's going to cover these sorts of topics, period, end. And having this frame of radical was a reminder to like really step back and really push the writers to bring their absolute A games, which they all did. And to let them be as radical in their pieces as they need to be as well. I don't know if either of you have anything you want to add to that. If not, that's fine.
Well, I would just say that radical is something that's, I think we all need to embrace, right? Like, this is, let's the term radicalness versus what we think of as normal. And I think it's not to get political, but also just the last few days with this election, you know, I've heard a lot of people use the word radical in a way that's very like, oh, this is bad,
Mhm.
you know, like radical left or whatever, just, but radical really means, you know, that this is a part of like the experience. This is part of, you know, it might be on the edges, but it is still part of this larger experience of life. And I think that's really important too, that we're separate those experiences that have been marginalized for a long time.
I think it would be really funny if this were called 37 Voices Explore Our Adorable Anatomy. Like, it's such a different feel for sure.
Different vibe for the whole book.
Or a very special anthology.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's real special.
And radical too is just, it's radical, right? It's rad. Like our bodies are rad. They do so much, and they just like, one of the contributors in an earlier panel, Nat Razi, said, sometimes we get this idea that we have a body and we have a mind and we separate the two. And she said, but the moment I was able to say I am a body, so much changed. And since she said that, I haven't stopped thinking about it. And like, that is what it means to have and to be radical anatomy, is you are a body. And that is pretty freaking rad.
That's super rad. No, absolutely.
I don't know if we, apparently we've answered the interview question. So you know what? Okay, since we still have a little time, I'm going to ask you one of my other questions on here, and maybe that'll spur some audience wanting to ask some more. And this is my question that, so I'll just read it. We all have them and we all navigate them differently. When you're having and I use quotes here, bad body day, what do you do to either feel better or accept the fact of that experience?
That's big. Yeah.
Little.
No, definitely. Yeah. I think that's such a huge thing, is just acknowledging that, that in and of itself, that like everybody has them. You know, not every single day you're going to wake up and you're going to be like, this is great, let's do this. That's just the reality of it. And I think just like accepting yourself where you are and accepting that experience is really big. I think something that's kind of helped me is kind of talking about my feelings when days like those happen. I will often like talk, if you have somebody that you love or you trust or any of those things, just kind of discussing with them like, hey, like not feeling good today, like not liking what I see, whatever it is. And just kind of, you know, having that opportunity to put those feelings out there and accept them. I'm a huge list maker also. That's another thing that I do. So I'll write down like lists. I have like a whole journal filled with them. But one of the things that I do is I'll do like 7. That's a random number, 37. I don't know. But so I'll do 7 because I feel like 5 isn't enough and 10 is maybe too many, or like I'm reaching if I get to 10, especially on days when it's hard. And I'll just kind of like list things. Some of them are superficial. Some of them are like, I like the way my eyes look in the sun. And then others are just, you know, like, it's incredible that I can get up and my heart is beating. And that's just like, that's a point. And that's definitely one thing that I think has really helped me on those bad body days, just sitting down and kind of reflecting and finding gratitude for myself and my body, and also just being like forgiving, for sure.
Yeah, I guess, you know, when I do have those bad days, like, so I do have like neuropathy, so like the therapy, sometimes it just shows up. It's just like, I don't care if you have 3 meetings today, I'm gonna hang out with you. Then I'm like, oh, okay, fine. So, you know, when those things happen, it does become a bad day. You know, I try to like just tell myself it's okay to cancel things. You know, it's like trying to like work through my own guilt about needing to change and pivot. I think that's another thing too, where, part of the, similar to what Rachel said about sharing your feelings, but also letting people know, like, hey, I know we were supposed to do this, but I can't today. And not having to feel bad about it. And trusting that people will understand it. And, just, I think it's also an interesting test on these bad days where you really do know people who care about you. And that's a really interesting kind of experience as well. Like people who will respect your boundaries and stuff like that. I think that's really interesting because again, it is thinking about bodies. It's also an extension of our social relationships and the way we navigate them because so much of it is mediated by what's sometimes going on inside of us and to the way people react to it. I think is very telling as well because we could do stuff to make ourselves feel better or get through the bad days. But it's also really interesting how the people around us can also really impact that too. In terms of, are they cool with this? Are they like, do I have to like, get all wrapped up in thinking about like, are they going to be annoyed with me? Just like all that stuff, right? So I think that's another layer of a bad day.
For sure. I always think about the airline, announcement, put your seatbelt on first before you help anybody else. And like, as much as that's a thing we learn to do, there's still, and I say this thinking particularly about female presenting people, there's still that guilt that comes with letting people down. Even though you're doing what you know is right and best for you, it's still hard to shake that, socially ingrained, like, but I should be showing up for them. And so it's tricky. It's really tricky. But you do, I think, get to know the people who really are what they say they are versus the folks who like don't respect your boundaries or can't respect your boundaries or don't want to take the time to understand that, your body is not their body and that your body requires something else that day. And that doesn't mean that that's going to happen tomorrow or down the road, that every day is different. There was another question from the chat, actually 2 questions. So the first one is, what are the keys to writing and connecting with people who may not share your experience or have a framework for understanding it? So big question. And I can say as an editor what I do. And that for me is when I edit a piece, I ask questions. And that's because I don't have those experiences and I don't understand them. And it's not my job as an editor to impose my view. And instead, it's my job as an editor to better understand what my writer wants to say and help them say exactly what they want to say in that way. And I found that works really well. I've learned so much, and I don't need a whole backstory, as we were talking about earlier, but sometimes I do need an explanation for an experience I just don't know, enough that I can then ask better questions and help them really nail that piece. I don't know their truth, and I'm never going to. And I don't ever want to be the expert in somebody else's experience, but I can be the person who asks them, like, can you talk about this a little bit more? Or this was really interesting. What do you think about highlighting this a little bit more? And so coming at it not from a not judgmental place, but from a place of curiosity, I think for me has been the biggest tool in doing that. Do either of you want to add anything?
I guess just to be totally honest, I try not to head toward making sure that it reaches a broader audience. To be honest, I want people to, I hate this phrase, but lean in. But in a way, really, I do want them to make a little bit of the effort too, to to mentor where I'm coming from. I think that's a tension that I constantly have with myself and my writing, because I do think that, especially as a disabled writer, I think I'm really mindful of just who am I speaking for? Who do I imagine the audience is? And why do I imagine, who am I writing this for? And I think sometimes it is absolutely okay to have a narrower field because, that's where it rarely happens so often. But I think that's where the editor also steps in and has really good perspectives because, you're kind of in your zone and the editor has a little bit more questions about can you give a little more detail, a little more context. And, this is where the trust comes in, with the editor and a writer. And I feel like, maybe oh, I didn't think about that. Or just, maybe it wasn't that important to me. But I'm okay, I can do this. It's not gonna change the heart of my piece. So I feel like trying to be as open as possible, to the edits and just, I think always if the editor is doing this to make it a better piece, that to me is that this is not to, not to police you, but to really make it as best as can be.
Yeah, that's a really good answer. The editorial perspective is a really valuable one, I think. Keys to writing and connecting with people. I think kind of what Alice said, who am I writing for is always a really good question to ask, writing young adult fiction, that's definitely something that I reflect on a lot. I think kind of on a smaller scale, a way that I find always helps with writing and connecting with people is humor. That's kind of at the basis of a lot of what I write. I think, a lot of times if you can make somebody laugh sometimes, this is just for me personally, then, there's kind of a different level of a connection there. And it might be easier to understand, comparing a back brace to Keira Knightley's corset in Pirates of the Caribbean. It's small, but you kind of understand oh, it's super restrictive of the certain things like that, certain elements. So yeah, I think humor is definitely a big way that for me personally has been a good way to connect and help people understand maybe an experience a little bit.
And then our next question is from Megan, who asks, what's next for each of you? Writing, ? Editing, ? My answer is I'm working on some stuff. I don't have anything under contract, but I'm playing with a novel that is a horror novel. We'll see if anything happens with it, but it's a lot of fun. It's kind of freeing not to have anything that I have to do. And at the same time, that's also terrifying. So I'm trying to enjoy this is freeing side a little bit more than this is terrifying, I don't know what's next side.
A horror novel, that's really cool. Yeah, I have a book coming out next month, actually, almost exactly a month from now, September 29th. It's called All This Time. It's a young adult novel. I wrote it with one of the screenplay writers of 5 Feet Apart, Mickey Daughtry. This is kind of her heart project, so I'm really excited that it's going to be coming out into the world. It's about a boy who, on the night of his high school graduation, he gets into a car accident, a tragic car accident that kills his girlfriend, and it's kind of about his healing process and grief and learning to love again and acceptance. So yeah, that's coming out next month. Hopefully some people will check it out.
Well, that's exciting. It's to be all have books coming out.
I know. Pandemic release buddies.
Let's see what happens, right? Yeah, I have a few things that are just in the works, and nothing I can really confirm just yet. So I guess, but that's kind of fun too, just have these things and then just later on when it's more, when it's really real. I can reveal it, but I think if the folks want to know, they just check out my website or just follow me on Twitter, and things will be published when it's time.
One of the things about publishing is like it's so far ahead, and yet you have so many secrets sometimes that it's like you can't really talk about it. And then you get to a place like where I'm at, and it's like I don't have any secrets because I don't have anything. But again, it's freeing, and it's kind of nice to be in that position. It's like I can go all in on talking about the book, and not worry about any other deadlines, and also not worry about pandemic brain, which is like zapped creativity for me. So, yeah.
Super cool. No, I totally agree. I feel like pandemic brain, I like back in maybe March or April, I was like, is this a thing? And then I was like on deadline, and I would just have like full like weeks sometimes where I was like, I cannot like sit down and write a word. Like it's so interesting, working or trying to work during this pandemic. It's crazy.
But I do think that the upside is that there is a hunger for books that do content. That's kind of exciting too, that people have. I'm not sure if they do have more time, but I think the idea of the need to find comfort, wherever that is, but I think books are a source of comfort for a lot of people. So that's maybe just one silver lining, and also just the fact, bookstores like this one is having online events. This is fantastic, and I totally hope that Women and Children's First continues these online events well after the pandemic, because these are ways to include all kinds of writers who may not be able to be physically present at a bookstore event. So I do hope if there's anything to come out of this is the fact that we need all kinds of formats for book events or just any sort of like activity.
Absolutely. We're like in 3 different time zones right now, and we're able to like have this conversation. That's so cool.
And that's like, that has been the best for me as an editor is, in the before I would go and do events, and it's like whoever was nearby could do it, and that was awesome. But often you would be with the same people over and over again. Nothing wrong with that. But what has been awesome with the virtual is that none of my panels have had the same people on them. Like I've done 4 very different panels, and it's just been awesome to talk with so many contributors who otherwise, like our conversation has been limited to email or Twitter, and it's very different than when you're looking at somebody and able to converse with them virtually like this and have these conversations that otherwise can't happen in real time.
For sure.
So many thanks to Women and Children's First.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you all so much. I think that was like the perfect note to end on. What a great conversation. I do also hope that we can continue these virtual events long into the future. And a reminder that you can find this book and a lot of the books talked about tonight, both in our store and on our website. Thank you all again for being here tonight. Thank you to the panelists. Thank you to the interpreters. And I hope everyone has a great night.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Perfect. I think we are no longer live.
Bye.
So you are all set. Thank you all so much. Any questions for me?
No, that was awesome.
No, that was super great. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Have a good one.
Day. Bye.
Bye.